Welcome to Mana's Potion. My name is Mitchell, but you can call me Mana. Today, I bring you another brutal brew in the form of the first Souls-like I ever played, Dark Souls 2. Well, better get a good look at what's come. Recording time! What happened? Hit the run alright, so why do we feel like absolute ass about it? Anyway, Dark Souls 2 being the first Souls-like game, let alone Dark Souls game, that I played means that I'm intimately familiar with it. And without pretending like last time, yes, I absolutely did a fist weapon challenge for this game before, and it's scattered across my VOD channel. So this is for cleaner posterity. However, there is one way I can make this challenge more interesting for me, and to my benefit, there's supposed to be a great reward at the end of it. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Allow me to pose the question. Can you beat Dark Souls 2 with fist weapons only? I mean, yeah, I just literally said I did it before. Quick rules explanation. Fists and fist weapons only for the hands and damage from the player. Torches are okay as long as you don't swing them. Otherwise, all else is fair game in the equipment department, provided you're not using it for an advantage against an enemy, be it damage or otherwise. Also, no cheating or exploits. Get it? Got it? Good. So, strategy. Pre-challenge strategy was all about picking the class with the lowest vitality stat. Why? There's a piece of equipment called Flynn's Ring. Basically, it gives additional attack damage based on equip load. The lower, the better. In Dark Souls 2, it actually scales based on your max possible equip load. So the initial thought was the lower that was, the better and more benefit I'd see from it once I got it. To spoil the surprise, this was faulty logic, as the ring caps at 60 max equip load. Besides the point, planning for it so early was a folly of mine, as it's only accessible in the Sunken City DLC. So if you want to follow in my footsteps, you could pick any class that starts with sub 14 vitality, which is all of them. Beyond that, the stats will mostly be leveling our strength and dexterity, then dumping into vigor and endurance. Likely, the knight or warrior classes will be your best start, as they have a good mix of those stats. There's a new stat we'll level up, but I want to cover that later. I started with the swordsman class, which isn't the worst start, but it certainly made for a challenging one. You can start with whatever gift you like, but I started with the bonfire aesthetic. An alternative I could suggest would be the human effigy. Trust me, you'll want it. So with that out of the way, how many choices of fist weapons do we have this time? 6, actually, and unfortunately only 3, maybe 4 are worth any consideration. The fuck me, this word is still weird. Punchy gloves, G for short, make a return, and so do the claws. Then 3 more claw options and 1 more fist option. We'll discuss each option a bit more as we find them. Oh, did I say we have 6 options? We actually have 7! Say hello to bare knuckle fighting, and, well, it's better, but it still sucks. With a base damage stat of 10, you'd think it's all downhill from here, right? Not so. Dark Souls 2 gives it damage scaling, so your starting class does matter. It has C strength scaling and D dex scaling, so it takes considerably more from the strength stat into consideration for scaling. We're not completely helpless before we get our first weapon. It just still sucks, to the point it's better if we rush getting our PG ASAP. Before we do, I joined the Company of Champions. This is how I will differentiate this posterity run from my personal run, as this makes it so enemies receive about 20% less damage, deal about 33% more damage, have a larger aggro radius, and disable the weird Dark Souls 2 mechanic of only spawning enemies a max of 10 times. So why am I doing this? You'll see. There's a master plan. First, the punchy gloves. How I don't miss this game. Say hi to Merchant Grandma. She provides the punchy gloves for 1,000 souls! They were 200 souls yesterday! Wait, how long ago was Lordran founded? What do you mean you don't know? Price aside, the punchy gloves make a comeback, and they are better than before. Crap, I don't have the strength to wield them properly. Give me a sec. Okay, let me restart. They are better than before. With the bare minimum strength to wield them, here's what we got. B strength scaling and C dex scaling from the word go. And that goes to a max potential of A and B respectively. Their moveset has a basic haymaker, strong punch, a swipe, and an uppercut. No back and forth swiping with the PG this go around, sadly. But we will have something even better here in a moment. Let me just acquire enough souls. Normally that doesn't happen this often. With about 15 strength and 11 dexterity, we have unlocked a new ability when we wield a second PG in the offhand. Behold! Power Stancing! From what I know, Dark Souls 2 is the only Dark Souls game where this is a proper mechanic. Dark Souls! While I can't speak for any other From Software game, I know for fact that you couldn't do this in Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 3 has a whole separate mechanic. Either way, Power Stancing changes our offhand light input to a 1-2 punch combo that chains up to 3 times, and the parry is replaced with what the fuck am I doing? You know what, let's not ever use that. Progress! Let's talk about progress. We've been trailblazing our way through the Forest of Fallen Giants while getting here, and hey, don't I know you?
My name is Pate.
Oh, okay. Hi, Pate. The setup is a trap? Okay, well, thanks for the heads up. But I'll be fine. Ah, shit. We get set back a few times and encounter the last giant. Oh, buddy, you were pissed just at the sight of me. Did I do something to you that I don't remember? I mean, this was a long recording, so, you know. Gloves on? What's our damage looking like? That is very workable. And actually something to comment on at this point. Strangely, practically every enemy in Dark Souls 2 seems to lack resistance to strike damage. Like, no, really. While I lack any technical evidence, it felt like on numerous occasions in both my private run of this and recording this run that any 1-2 attacks made with my punchy gloves felt equivalent to damage I would do with, let's say, an ultra great sword. Is it just me? Can anyone confirm or deny this? Anyway, TLG downed. Ring of Silver Serpent picked up. So, who's next? It would have been the Dragon Rider if I remembered to record it. Look, I'll make it up to you, alright? You really didn't miss much, promise, but then who do I have left? Ah, you. I remember you. I also remember how to make an utter fool of you and eviscerate you. Just ignore the first death. For those that know, would you believe I beat this boss with 0 investment into adaptability the first time I played this game? Because I did. And by Joe, I still got it. We double back from the Forest of Fallen Giants and head to Heide's Tower of Flame again. And, is it just me or are these guys hitting incredibly hard? Pressing onto No Man's Wharf, we say hi to my souls dealer, Gavlan, and break our way to board a pirate ship, where the Flexile Sentry awaits us. The arena of this fight is progressively flooding, thus it's in your best interest to be aggressive. That's going to be a common theme in this game, by the way. If you take too long, moving and dodging becomes a real problem. We backtrack and struggle bus our way past the now angered Heide Knights and defeat a familiar looking dragon, and then take the fight to Ornstein. Hey dude, where's Smo? And what's up with the goth face? That's not a big deal when it's just a one-on-one fight. This fight's actually fair. You know, dodge well or parry his attacks and you're golden. Easy boss, please buff. Now that both routes to the path forward are cleared and I did what I could up to this point, I properly start the Lost Bastille. Meet an enemy who must have regretted his choices leading up to this point, and punch my way to the first fight that gave me true troubles in my youth. The Ruined Guardians. This might be a weird time to bring this up, but adaptability is actually a crucial stat in this game if you intend to do any amount of dodging. Hell, if you want to drink Estus at a reasonable speed even. To bring it back to the fight, the Ruined Guardians have a number of pretty quick attacks that ask you to stay on your toes at the very least. For whatever reason, adaptability in Dark Souls 2 ended up creating a stat that most influences a lot of animations. Agility. Most importantly, it determines how quickly you can take a sip from your Estus flask and how many iframes you get from both your dodge rolls and your backstep dodges. While agility was an interesting concept to create, I feel it wasn't implemented well in the slightest. The short reason why is that you aren't going to cast any spells, get an adaptability stat of about 24, which I got long before this point, and that will typically get you an agility stat of 99. While that nebulous number doesn't mean much, it is about all you need for the game to calculate and give you Dark Souls 1 levels of iframes when you roll. Any more than that gives you a better roll at higher and specific thresholds. So the plan was, get my agility to a reasonable level, and then focus on getting other stats that I wanted. And that I feel is the only real best way to play Dark Souls 2. Now I say all this, and my crazy ass managed to beat the game without much investment into agility on my first finishing playthrough. But I don't exactly have that recorded now, do I? Where was I? Oh, right. Lost Bastille. Go deeper in for Sinner's Rise, wade through waist-high water, and oh! You know, I always hated those mummies? What are they anyway? A number of deaths aside, we eventually make it to the first major boss of the run, the Lost Sinner. She's... okay, real talk, she's actually kind of tough. If you did not light a flame the tar on either side outside of the arena, you can't stay locked onto her unless you stay close to her. And with her fast, hard-hitting attacks and being able to jump to break your lock, that's a really hard ask. But, did I mention this was my first Dark Souls game? And I beat it without investing many, if any, points into adaptability? Yeah, no, I'm basically playing with my training weights off here. I take a detour back to the Pharos Lock earlier in the Bastille and take a jaunty stroll through the Luna Belfry. Belfry Luna? Potato, potato. Reliving the meanest recreation of a Dark Souls 1 boss fight for my troubles. Though, genuinely, be aggressive. This gargoyle fight is 4 Kings light. It's really just a DPS check. If you can clear out one before another one wakes up, you can stay ahead of being overwhelmed. Keep that in mind, stay light on your toes, and you'll be fine. Probably. Now we just have to go all the way back to Majula and make our way through Huntsman's Cup. Wait a minute, did we seriously just cross the ocean only to resume our journey back at the hub that we left from? Like, that's not that big of a deal, but considering the interconnected nature of the previous game, it's an incredibly odd deviation to make for the sequel of Dark Souls. Okay, back to focusing on the journey. We encounter 3 Skeleton Sams, also known as the Skeleton Lords, and pulverize them. Spoilers, much like in Dark Souls 1, these bony boys are weak to strike damage. Ha ha! Take that, you calcified collection of cadavers! Ah! Wheelie Wesley, not again! Doubling back in the copse to an arena overlooking the whole area, we sprint past the Guardians. Come on, get in already! Fuck! We sprint and then wait off to the side for the Guardians to fall off the bridge of their own volition, and then enter the ring against an interesting boss fight if there ever was one. The Executioner's Chariot. Ugh, poor Sam. I'll say it, I don't like this fight. It's a gimmick fight in the nicest sense of the term, but with skeleton Sams and necromancers who will resurrect them if you don't take them out. But now you have to worry about an overly high damaging chariot whizzing by you that you have to avoid or dodge roll past. And once you get to the gate, you shut it, if you're a melee build, and then the real boss fight can begin. With the 2-headed skeletal horse. Wait, that's the boss? And the horse is pretty lethal and fast, but if you're good with your dodge rolls and dodge roll earlier than you feel you need to, the horse isn't too bad. Alright, with that out of the way, we head over to Harvest Valley. That's been happening a lot. I'll just chalk it up to the Company of Champions. Pushing our way through poison mists and giants, say hi to my dealer along the way until we find Jabba the Hutt. He is certainly a boss fight. That's really about all I have to say about him. As we climb up the Tower of Earthen Peak, we start collecting the other weapon category that we can use. No, seriously, all 4 weapons that are claws can be acquired here. First, let's talk about the man who has one such weapon, Gilligan. Aren't you supposed to be harassing a bunch of little people on an island somewhere?
You idiot.
He sells us the claws for 1,200 souls! Holy hell, what a steal! Believe it or not, these are not the end-all be-all weapon of this game. Yes, they still inflict bleed, which is great, but what sets them back hard is their scaling. E strength and B dex that maxes out to A. So, compared to the punchy gloves, shockingly lower amount of damage. But Mana, I hear the straw man in my head cry out, what about enemy resistances? Surely there's an enemy weak to slashing? And yeah, there probably is. But problem, no enemy is particularly strong against strike in this game. And if they are, it's not apparent. Plus, once again, they do less poise damage, so sadly, even with the bleed infusion, the claws just end up being not worth it. Another of the weapons we get our mitts on are the mannequin claws, and these are interesting. They're technically better than the claws, primarily because of the double C for strength and dex scaling, but when infused with poison for whatever reason, their base physical and base bleed damages go up, and they get poison damage added. Now, they're still not great. Infusion lowers the grade of scaling by 1 grade, with only strength ever recovering. So with all of those upsides, is there a reason I'm not using them? Besides the same issues as the claws, it's the amount of status damage that's done. While yes, I will make use of the mannequin claws, the low-ended bleed and poison damage means it takes far too many hits to actually apply bleed or poison, to the point that most enemies will probably die if it's applied, or lose whatever build-up received when I back up to evade and recover. But of the extra options, these could have made the cut. The other 2 claws we get are the Work Hook and the Malformed Claw. The former reduces adaptability in exchange for giving +5 dexterity when equipped, a wholly not worthwhile transaction, and the Malformed Claw is just a worse claw. Neither even inflict bleed by default, and apparently the one-hand strong attack of the Malformed Claw can penetrate shields, but that's not particularly useful. You know, for the series that changed my view on my own builds in action RPGs, and updated my playstyle to just try stuff, Dark Souls 2 really feels like it hates letting a player experiment with weapons and have fun with status ailments, huh? Well, anyway, we forge on and greet Pate again, who informs us that there's some treasure behind a locked door. Then we greet Mithra with... Mithra? No, not Mithra! Then we greet Mytha with the amount of royalty she deserves. And then make our way up to Stan's Fortress of Fire! And oh boy, do we have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of fun here! No, seriously, fuck this place. I maybe came here a bit early in terms of the intended order of the 4 spokes from Majula, but it's never a fun place to go to and fight through. The place starts off with 2 invaders at the front door, neither of whom are particularly fun to fight. Then each and every one of the Alone Knights hits like a small fire truck, and that's before factoring in Company of Champions, actually. And then there's the overall lacking design. This place actually feels a bit rushed, if you wanted my opinion. The only place that looks like it had any noticeable design is the Soul Belfry. Belfry Soul, potato, potato. And unless you're part of the Bell Guardian Covenant, there's not really any reason to go through there as a normal player, so you might actually miss it. Well, okay, there is immolation, if you're insane. Never mind. First, we deal with the Smelter Demon. Nothing terribly special. Dodge his attacks with good timing, and be mindful of your health when he lights himself on fire. Oh yeah, sure, you get to use immolation like it's no big deal. Once he's dead, we return to his arena to fight a Dark Pursuer, and pick up a ring that'll stick with us for the rest of the run. The Ring of Blades, +1. You can get a regular version earlier, but why keep that when this is available? We then push on and make it to the major boss of the area, the Old Iron King. And while he definitely hits hard, has some interesting attacks and patterns, he's harmlessly slow. My own excuses aside for dying so often, dodge past his attacks, smack his hands until he calls it quits from too many fist bumps, and goes away. Now it's back to Majula. Again? Okay. With Gilligan's help, we can build some ladders down the pit and make our way into the Grave of Saints. Bit of a weird area, this one. If I was playing online, there's a chance I could be summoned to a player's world for trespassing here. I would be a phantom, and the Covenant member would be the one risking it all. Though it's the only one of 2 areas where the enemies will attack a phantom player and not the host player, provided they're summoned in that way. Weird Covenant, that one. Thought it worth mentioning as some trivia, since the only real eventful thing that happens is my fight against the Royal Rat Vanguard. The rat's attacks can petrify you, so other than a warning to watch that status bar alongside your health bar, the ads go down in a couple of hits, while Vaughn goes down in like 9. Deeper still into the depths of the earth until we make it to Blighttown 2.0, the gutter! And I don't like this place. It's somewhat confusing to navigate, sure, but what gets me is how it pulls mechanical references from Dark Souls 1. The gutter has the Tomb of Giants problem in that if you don't have a light source, this place is a real bitch to navigate. But nothing interesting happens here either. Just has tough as nail dog enemies and a few invasion. What lies Beyond it, however, that has earned my ire. The Black Gulch. Fuck this place, and fuck its poison spitting statues. This is not better than a poison swamp, Dark Souls! Okay. I need to address the editing choices in the room with how often I'm dying. Yes, this is certainly influenced by the Company of Champions buff, so I can't entirely blame enemy placement and enemy design. I would like to make my case that Dark Souls 2 took what Dark Souls 1 did in regards to enemy placement and strength and made it worse. There is one very blatant example, not worth talking about right now as it's very cherry-picked. Otherwise, with just about every boss encounter in this game, not a single one, took me more than maybe 6 attempts to beat. The relative ease and predictability of the bosses is not necessarily a bad thing either. It's certainly something to point out and discuss changes to animations, hitboxes, and damage, but I feel this is worth pointing out in conjunction with the run-ups. The enemies, hazards, and the placements thereof leading up to boss fights to unpack. While I don't have a hard count, I died over 100 times in this challenge, and seeing how few times I ultimately died to the bosses, a mixture of issues present themselves in how I play the game, as well as what I think is how the enemies and hazards are designed and placed. Dark Souls 2 sort of forces confrontation, even when it's a lot of times against the player's best interests, making the bosses feel easy compared to the rest of the game. And I was under the impression that the highlight of a Souls-like were the bosses, not the enemies before them. Well, my persistence has given me a small consolation, the Forgotten Key and a Giant Soul. Fuck yeah, loot. With some morale in our step after taking down this rather tricky challenge, we face off against another major boss, the Rotten. He cooks my goose the first time or two with him, but there's a reason speedrunners use this guy for souls farming. He's slow, predictable, and while he's hitting me hard, he actually doesn't hit hard enough. Well, back to Majula, yet again, where we go through the shaded woods and fight a sexy scorpion lady. No camera's gonna take away the smooth carapace from me. Strategy. Oh, right. I don't know, dodge at the proper timing. Pressing forward, we find ourselves underground again in the Doors of Pharos. Taking a detour into the Rat King Covenant Zone, we challenged the Royal Rat Authority to a fight, and they brought friends. Swell. Tip, get to their back legs and beat the crap out of them. Took a couple tries, but Sif 1.5 is thoroughly dealt with. Oh, ew, stop it! Gods, rats are supposed to be cute, yet this thing's making me want to barf! An unfun fact, rats are incapable of truly vomiting. That's why rat poison works. We find out where our dealer lives, and trust me, I will come back for more souls. And past him lies Brightstone Cove Zeldora. Entering what arachnophobes would call hell itself, this is your warning, and take on the Prowling Magus and his congregation. It's, I mean, if you're capable, see for yourself. I died the first time due to just unfortunate luck, but like, it's not even a remotely hard fight. I hear fighting in the village area and go inside to investigate. Apparently, Pate got himself into some trouble. I break up the scuffle and get a reward from Pate for my troubles. Well, that was awfully kind of him. And he warns us about a trap, tells us where some treasure is, gives us this for saving his life. I'm sure this'll be— You son of a bitch!
Ooh, that'll leave a nice scar.
This is why we have trust issues! We enter the ominously large building and navigate past the webs to find— Seath, is that you? Oh. Oh no. Oh no! This is the Duke's Dear Freya. Another brick wall for yours truly when I first played this game. So, no surprises that I kinda make a bit of a mockery of it. Oops. Frankly, the fight's easy enough to get into a loop. Be aggressive, get close to the head, beat it up, dodge roll when you need to. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Wait, the fuck? You can do that? And with that, we have the 4 great souls. We can— Ow! You know, that just gave me a weird thought. An exiled pyromancer, a forgotten and otherwise sealed king, a collection of corpses all sharing one soul, and a pale drake corpse. It's almost like Lordran— Nah, couldn't be. Anyway, we can start working to the mid-game. We return to the shaded woods and head up the left path to the Shrine of Winter. After the heavy doors swing open, we head through a torrential rainstorm to Drangleic Castle, and it's here we find a location snuck away in a dark crevice. I'll take this opportunity to take a brief detour. Running back to the Black Gulch and Shaded Woods, we find the other two secret locations in their dark crevice and speak to the geriatric gentleman in both of them. And once we return to Drangleic Castle to speak with him, he offers us the option to join the Pilgrims of the Dark. This covenant is the only way to find a somewhat secret boss in Dark Souls 2. But we're required to run through 3 mini-dungeons full of literal cheating player characters operating with some of the best builds the Dark Souls 2 meta has ever seen. Honestly, small comfort I deal and take normal damage while in this covenant, but fuck me, the heavily armored guys are super cheating. Once you light the beacon and defeat all of the enemies in your way at the 3 dark dive locations specified, you'll come face to face with the Darklurker. He comes equipped with a variety of magical ranged attacks and a few simple melee attacks. This was my last human effigy, so if I die now, I got it. You're fucking kidding me. Well, if I want to beat this boss, I need to get more human effigies. Problem, I already bought out Merchant Grandma, and none of the other merchants I have access to at this time sell human effigies. So my only real option is to grind for them. Needing to improvise, I learned the dogs in the Lost Bastille have a fairly high chance of dropping them. Trouble with that is they will also sometimes drop souls of unnamed soldiers instead. And for whatever reason, I got 2 more human effigies, and then ran out of luck with them. I also learned Chalcure Enchanté will sell an infinite amount of prism stones now, and the pair of crow siblings in the Things Betwixt will take these and sometimes give you a human effigy for one. But that process is lengthy and cumbersome. So to make sure I had a small buffer, I burned a bonfire ascetic in Majula and slew the skeletons in the manor basement. Just the once. They're the one enemy that's easy enough that are guaranteed to drop a human effigy on death, and on each cycle of New Game Plus, an extra one spawns from the count before. So while I killed 1 for New Game Plus, there was 2. You know the thing that gets me about this issue? If I wasn't with the Company of Champions, I actually wouldn't have had this problem. Because every invader I've killed at this point has dropped an awe stone instead of a human effigy. The more you know. After that adventure, round 2 with the Darklurker goes much better, and is actually the only attempt I needed after my first bumble. Cool! Just be aware that at half HP he splits into 2 of the same boss, and they share the health pool. So you'll need to keep your wits about you and switch on and off lock-on. So much for getting an effigy buffer, but with that, I can just return to the Company of Champions and focus on the rest of the game. Plus I got my King Jeremiah fit again. Wish it wasn't yellow, but hey. We push through Drangleic Castle to the first of its 2 bosses, the Twin Dragon Riders! See? I told you didn't miss much! Isn't fighting 2 of these guys a fitting makeup? Yeah, no. Even in a 2 versus 1 situation, I can't rightly say either of these 2 are hard, or both of them unfair. We navigate through the bizarrely designed castle until we can get the doors open to King's Way, where the second boss awaits us, the Looking Glass Knight. He has a special mechanic where he'll summon extra dudes from his mirror to help fight for him, and he has some unique attacks that do lightning damage. For anyone not aware, rain, making you wet, and lightning do not mix nicely. Finally, strike his shield at all, and you'll bounce off of it. But, after 2 attempts, not only does he not get the chance to summon extra friends, but he's dead for good. So, good on me, I guess? Next up is the Shrine of Amana, which... I'll level with you guys, I hate this place. However, Dark Souls 2 with the Company of Champions is forcing me to slow down and eliminate just about every enemy one at a time to make reasonable progress. It hasn't stopped me from sprinting past them in some areas even here, but yeah, this is one of a handful of areas I didn't die too many times working through. Wish I could say the same about the Demon of Song. Took me a number of tries relearning the timings of her attacks and avoiding the wonky ass hitboxes that were her hands. She's slow. Only has certain windows she can be attacked anyway. With enough patience, we make it through. Down, down, deeper and down yet, we find ourselves in the Undead Crypts. Wait a minute, I don't remember that you could break these. Nor do I remember they stay broken, hell yeah! I hate this place almost entirely because of these ghostly assholes. Gods, thankfully I'm not playing a man. I can still kick their asses. That's a Lord of the Rings joke, by the way. Soon we find ourselves before the guardian of King Vendrick. His name is Velstadt, the Aegis. And what a misnomer that is. He ain't nothing against the power of my unstoppable fists. Be mindful that around 50% HP, he'll power up, so his attacks will hit harder. But besides that, just dodge your way out of his attacks. So King Vendrick isn't gonna need his ring, so I'ma just take this. Back to the Shaded Wood to go through another path, this time down the middle, and into Aldea's Keep. I sincerely don't stay here long. By this point, I'm tired of dying to just about everything between me and the bosses, and I could hardly remember how to explore this place fully anyway. So, skipping straight to the boss, and it's a Guardian Drake. Didn't I just kill one of you at Heide's Tower? I guess this one can fly and breathe fire from the wall. Okay, neat. This is a copy and paste, verbatim. Technically, yes, this boss is the first time you encounter him in the original Dark Souls 2, but shush, no one can buy that game normally anymore. Even then, my point is, I hope this doesn't set precedence for later. Sprinting through the Dragon Area to the Dragon Shrine, where we prove our might to literally everyone before gaining an audience with the Ancient Dragon. You know, I'm gonna let the intrusive thoughts win. I always wanted to slay a giant dragon. This boss sucks. If you know the toe strat, he's easy as can be. Even if you didn't, it's not like you couldn't figure it out. Gods, can we even consider this giant excuse of a fight an equally giant health bar a boss at this point? So, now where do we go? Why the Forest of Fallen Giants? But of course! You know, I never gave the design of Dark Souls too much thought up until this point, but this is just confusing. If you didn't know this is where you were supposed to go next, it seems Shalcure Enchanté will tell you some of the time. Which, I guess is RPG logic in a nutshell, but while RPGs that aren't entirely clear expect this of you, nothing of any of the previous Souls game, to my knowledge anyway, is like this. I like Dark Souls 2 fine enough as a game, and as someone who doesn't like Souls games, I can say that about all 3 of the Dark Souls games. But man, this game has some of the design decisions of all time, doesn't it? So, with the Ashen Heart given to us by the late Ancient Dragon, we can now delve into the memories of the Fallen, which is honestly just a fancy way to say we can go back in time. We were rooting around in the memories of 2 giants, then with the 3rd giant giving us a boss fight against the Giant Lord. I recognize you. Oh, that's why the last giant was so upset to see us. We kind of kicked his ass back then. Yeah, I'd be pissed too. But with him out of the way, that's all but one of the vanilla bosses down before the final gauntlet. I could do that now, but why don't we go on an adventure? We've got the DLC left after all. The Sunken City DLC. Boy, howdy, this is gonna be great. I really like the DLC in Dark Souls 1, so surely this will measure up well. What the fuck is this? No, seriously, what the fuck is this? Enemies in Dark Souls 1 DLC weren't nearly this tanky. What the fuck is this? From what I understand and experienced, this DLC, as well as the later 2, gives the player a choice. Either you start doing high raw damage and abandon your elemental damage and status ailments, or you get the fuck out of here. Fun, fantastic, fabulous even. Now couple that with the fact that I'm in the company of champions, and not only is everything surviving for 1 to 3 more punches than they should, but they're also chunking me for a quarter of my health. No, this is fine. Really, I hope I continue to deal with this moving forward for the promise of power. Unsurprisingly, I don't like this DLC, but it has a long-awaited reward for me that is kind of worth the wait. Flynn's Ring. And if you forgot, it scales based on max carry weight. And since by this point, I only have a carry capacity of 59.5, I'm perfectly below where I need to be. We sprint our way through until we find the Cave of Wonders. Like, I wonder why they thought making the poison statues spit petrify was a good idea! On the other end of it is the first boss we'll challenge of the DLC, the Gank Squad, the Grave Robber, Varg, and Sarah. And if you thought a 2 versus 1 was unfair, wait until you get a load of these 3. Just run around like a chicken with your head cut off and poke down Sarah where you can, then go deal with either Varg or the Grave Robber. Though be aware, Varg does have Estus and will drink it when at 50% health or less. And with enough patience and tenacity, and plenty of running, you'll win. Honestly, just what a weird fight with the cheesiest solutions. There were a few moments where I almost lost, but like, it really was that easy. Kinda anticlimactic. Being chased from the city into the depths of the Dragon Sanctum, we find the second boss of the DLC, Alana, the Squalid Queen. And she took some attempts. I'll be real, the most difficult part about her fight is that she'll summon ads to support her, and they'll either be Velstadt, 3 bony boys, or some pigs. While I've never seen the last option, the other 2 are the most annoying. When she summons ads, deal with them while keeping an eye on Alana. While Dark Souls 1 would have taught you to stay locked off, Dark Souls 2 has since fixed its lock-on to actually be viable. So staying locked on to the ad works just as well as switching between lock-on and lock-off. Just don't lose track of what Alana's doing, or you'll take as many attempts as I did. She's not the final boss of the DLC though. We still have one more beyond her arena. Sin, the slumbering dragon. Oh, for fuck's sake, really? It took me 3 tries. The most of strategy I have is to stick to his back legs when attacking him. Man, FromSoft is one of 3 right now when it comes to even remotely decent, true dragon boss fights in Dark Souls. Well, true in the sense that they have 4 legs and wings. Let's just leave and head to DLC 2 already. Broom Tower. I'm getting this feeling that I didn't really care for this place too much, and the fact that the Sunken City DLC left this awful taste in my mouth, I'm not really confident Broom Tower will recover well. Suspicions confirmed. Well, it's better than the Sunken City. Not by much. Enemies have manageable poise, yet still copious amounts of health. But now we have this weird mechanic where we have to deal with these ashen idols when we find them, as they'll either attack us, buff the enemies, or heal them, and a couple of them even have the ability to curse us when we're in the general region, which will make us go hollow and reduce our max HP. Oh, right, going hollow. I didn't really bring that up much, did I? It didn't affect the run much, but it's definitely a design choice. Surely the bosses can save this, right? Right? A reskin? As a DLC boss? You're fucking with me. I'd be repeating myself regarding the Smelter demon if I talked about this guy. It's the same fight, just some of the animations go faster at lower health, and his stats are inflated. Done deal! What about the next boss? Oh, thank God. A boss with a bit of strategy to talk about. The Fume Knight. His most threatening sword is in his left hand, so stick to his left for the best results in dodging it, and his attacks in general. He has a mix of slow and fast tells, so watch him carefully and slip in attacks when and where you can. Once he's lost enough health, he'll switch to phase 2 where he'll power up his Ultra Greatsword with darkness and fire and drop the longsword, increasing his damage to incredible levels. He also gains 2 attacks that are just a giant pain. One that is a startup explosion that then sends out a bunch of small projectiles that you very much should dodge like your entire body is the hitbox in a bullet hell. Don't dodge roll. And then an otherwise slow swipe with a medium range that'll hurt like hell. Stay cool, stay calm, and you'll breathe easier once you've cleared the fumes. Okay, so he isn't the last boss of the DLC, but he's technically the final boss, so who's next? They really are just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, huh? Fine, what with time travel, it's time to beat Aku for Jack or something. Suralon. Just instead of a fight where you get to take your time, you have a time limit. Oh, you didn't know? When using the Ashen Heart, you only have so long in the memory before you're ejected. While that won't be death for you, it will certainly mean you have to start the fight all over. No pressure though, good luck! In sincerity, this is sadly a fight where getting good is about the only suggestion I have. He's fast, hits hard, and has pretty short tells for when and where he'll attack, with his distance closing upward diagonal cut being the only attack that has a slower tell to mess with your sense of timing. Once you find your groove, you'll find he's kind of like a rhythm game, which is probably what I can find enjoyable about Dark Souls to a point. If you can find a good sense of rhythm, you'll find getting good is easy. Sadly though, Suralon is an example of a solid boss fight in this instance. The run-up to him, however, is atrocious. Oh, but this isn't the one I'd cherry-pick. With his death, we move on to the final DLC, Frozen Eleum Loyce. Arguably my favorite DLC for the bosses. Well, 2 of them, anyway. Before we can do anything, however, we have to go pick up a key item. See, the first boss is invisible until we get it, so fighting them would be quite the challenge without it. Once we run and slay our way through this winter wonderland, we pick up the Eye of the Priestess, and note that some other enemies that were once invisible to us are now visible. And with this in hand, it's now time to take on Ava, the king's pet. Taken down first try. Not even remotely close. With the permission from the Watcher, she ends the blizzard that's been reducing visibility in the area, and in doing so unfreezes the rest of the city. And thanks to this, we can ignite torches outside and find the last weapon that we could possibly use, the Bone Fist. If I could do this run over, I'd actually use this and see about getting a second. This is basically just a better punchy glove. Yes, it's relatively heavy, but it does twice as much poise damage and features up to S strength and A dex scaling when fully reinforced. Shamefully, without either grinding or New Game Plus status, this is the only one that's guaranteed to acquire like this. I should have used it, to be perfectly honest. No sense dwelling on it. Let's go tobogganing in a coffin. Hang on, there's dread setting in. Oh no. Oh fuck me, I made a mistake! No! No, 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 no! This place. This is the single most egregious example of area design in all of Dark Souls. Not only that, but it's actually exacerbated by my being in the company of champions. To elaborate, I feel this area is the best worst example of enemy design and enemy placement of Dark Souls 2. I say best worst because it highlights just precisely the problem that several lead-ups to bosses have, albeit to exaggerated proportions. So, I'll factor in the company of champions really quick. Were I not in that specific covenant, this area might be a bit easier to navigate. The Lightning Horses, is that seriously their official name? I'll call them as I see them. Kirin. The Kirin all allegedly patrol set areas invisible. They only aggro and turn visible when you wander into their threat range during the whiteout blizzards, which are in set intervals. Are you picking up the problem I'm laying before you? The company of champions increases their aggro range, so what could be a high chance of aggroing one normally turns into a statistical guarantee. There are only a total of 5 truly safe areas where no Kirin is remotely near during a blizzard, where you spawn, the 3 ruins on the map, and the entrance to the boss arena. I say safe the way I do because 2 of them are occupied, and of the 2, one has an enemy that, if you're not good at fighting, can mess you up and burn your limited resources anyway. Which, may I state, is primarily my issue with many lead-ups to bosses. I feel they exist to drain your resources for the boss fight. So, you have roughabouts 3 options to approach the Frigid Wastes boss. Option 1, try and sprint to the boss door with reckless abandon, ignoring everything along the way. That will work with varying levels of success, and requires an immense amount of luck. Option 2, fight every Kirin that gets in your way to the boss door, which would work, provided the Kirin didn't violate what I'm going to call the golden triangle of enemy design. This is a concept I'm paraphrasing from Pirate Software. By the way, you should totally go check them out. Enemies in RPGs have this triangle of stats, and the stats of this triangle are represented as their speed, their health, and their damage. If an enemy has high stats in 2 of these areas, the 3rd area should be low to make the enemy fair for the player to fight. So if they're fast but tanky, they need to do low damage. A lot of Dark Souls 2 can cite this in its enemy design. Not always, but a lot. The Kirin, however, absolutely circumvent this. They're tanky, they're fast, and they hit hard. As I recall, this is the case even outside the company of champions, but even if it weren't, they're still fast and powerful enough that I feel most players will do what they can to avoid their attention altogether. Which then leads to option 3. Avoid them by any means necessary. This can work under normal circumstances, but when you're in the company of champions, that isn't easy if you're looking to make a run for the door. Your route is limited to the safe areas with good timing between blizzards, and that will take ages. And even then, I still have to fight the occasional Kirin that aggroes to me between the ruins. All of that makes this wear down a player's patience and sanity. Make no mistakes, I reached the boss. It's a Twin Kings pet fight against Lud and Zalin. Honestly, this being a copy-paste but doubled is hardly noteworthy at this point. The second pet will only join the fight once the primary one loses about 66% of his health. So, ultimately this fight wouldn't be so bad if the dread of having to go through the Frigid Waste again, if I failed, didn't permeate my mind, making me prone to mistakes. And so I died, and after several more attempts of getting through the lead up and wasting multiple hours of my time, I just said fuck it. Can you beat this boss for this challenge run? Yes, absolutely. I've done it even, and I can plug when and where. 4 flasks, making plans and conquering snow collection back on the 1st January 2023 on my VOD channel, 1 hour, 48 minutes, and 44 seconds into it. It's entirely possible. Company of Champions just exacerbates poor design. And frankly, once it stops being remotely interesting or fun, or starts to take a toll on my mind, it's just not worth doing. Random thought. Of endless loops and struggles that can lose their luster, you ever think that immortality or never-ending prosperity might stop being interesting after a while? I'm gonna put a pin in that thought. Last DLC fight then. The Burnt Ivory King and his retinue of knights. Thankfully, it's not just me versus them. I got a squad to back me up. We are glorious. The first portion of the fight is chaotic and a little reliant on luck. Pick your battles, try to not get surrounded, stay safe, and beat the hell out of whoever you can, whenever you can. Just don't get greedy about it. Once all the gates are sealed by 3 of the 4 Ivory Knights, the second phase of the... Wait, why is the ground shaking and one of the portals remains unsealed? You can get him to spawn when you eliminate all Burnt Knights? Okay, well, the start of phase 2 is a bit different then, because it's a 3 versus 2 situation for a bit. Eliminate the ad while the second to last Ivory Knight seals the portal, then when it's a 2 versus 1, keep your wits about you and remember, Burnt Ivory King is left-handed, so stick to his left hand for the best chance of dodging his attacks. I thought he'd lightsaber up his sword at 50% health, but apparently that's just in his move repertoire to do after a certain time. It gives him extended range and adds magic damage to his attacks, so be ready to dodge more as he swings. It took multiple tries to get the Burnt Ivory King to spawn, but once I got him in the battle, only took me 1 try. The sacrifice of the knights will be remembered. You know, I'm not entirely ready to give up on Zalin and Lud, so it's time to grind. For what, you might ask? Awe Stones. Time to put the master plan in action. Now, there's a number of routes to go about doing this, but they generally come in 2 flavors. One flavor will guarantee drops at the expense of needing to deal with a respawning invader on New Game Plus difficulty, while the other flavor will sometimes drop them, but you deal with normal enemies that have an Awe Stone as part of their drop table, while in the Company of Champions. I opted for the latter, because the Eye of the Priestess works on more than just Ava. I didn't showcase them earlier, but there are translucent player character enemies in the Shaded Woods that you can't lock onto normally, making them frustrating to attack. But if you have the Eye of the Priestess, well, if you can, take a look. Not only can I see them just fine, but I can even lock onto them. To make matters better, the only item they have a chance to drop is an Awe Stone. With my overleveled ass killing these guys over and over again, wearing and using all the stuff I have to increase drop rate, it's only a matter of time before I get the reward I seek. So do you remember when I said there's only 7 weapons for this challenge? Well, there's actually 8! Say hello to the Vanquisher Seal! This puppy raises your unarmed base damage from 10 to 200 and raises the stat scaling to B strength and C dexterity. Not only that, but you can power stance when completely unarmed, making this the strongest and best option for a fist weapon only run. No. No, I did not just see that, let alone felt it. You've got to be shitting me. Is that attack slower than when I'm dual wielding punchy gloves? That was genuine footage too. Indeed, the Vanquisher Seal has longer starting lag and ending lag than any other fist weapon when in a power stance. Plus the animation itself overall is just slower, making it more dangerous to attack with than anything I've since had at my disposal. The kicker? It used to be just as fast as the PG power stance, but FromSoft nerfed it a while back because, and I'm just speculating here, it was starting to become a problem in PvP. Everything I've said up to this point that made the punchy gloves so good made it so the best fist weapon in the game ended up getting nerfed to being one of the worst. Oh, don't get me wrong, it still smashes like nobody's business, but because it's as slow as it is, I would hazard to guess that its DPS is the same as the punchy gloves, meaning I just wasted my time for 44 hours being in the Company of Champions for 90% of that time. The only thing I have to show for it? Nothing. Pain. regret, disappointment, and a ring. Not even a real sense of pride or accomplishment. Every challenge that stood in my way crumpled beneath my attacks. No boss in this game, even when put to pressure me with adjusted stats, could stand up to the combination of skill and patience that I put to test against them. The standard enemies couldn't really stop me. Only Lud and Zalin get a half victory, and even then, it's because I gave up trying to get to them. You know, aren't we just going in circles? In cycles, even. To avoid an end. In one world, the Empire seeks immortality out of fear of death and ends up ruining the world and their existence because of it. In this world, Lord Ron sought to extend a golden age out of fear of the death of their kingdom and ruins the world and their existence because of it. Here we are again. Another kingdom, another person, frightened of the end, so they ruined not just their world, but 3 others too. And it's not long before their own existence is ruined as well. For what? Just so they didn't have to feel the sting of an ending? For all the mistakes they made? They could say they never gave up? Even when they should have by all accounts? When will it stop? When do I get to embrace an ending of my own? Will I never find a worthy challenge that will give me pause? Push me past my limits and make me give in? Maybe I'm not looking at it right. Maybe I'm not asking the right questions. What am I missing? I thought I learned my lesson, but I keep pushing against the status quo. Why do I struggle against them so? Why do I choose not to link the fires? I did it to end a cycle, yes, but what good came of it when everything looped all over again? And will keep looping. I don't want to face an eternity of this or anything else. Hell, I don't think anyone does. So what do I do? What do I...
But the question remains. What do you want? Tell me.
What do I want? I guess I want to live and know that I lived. I don't need the world to know that I lived. I want to know I gave it my all for the world. That I grew as a person. That I grew as a fighter. When I'm good and ready, I'll ring my bell. And then I'll call it quits. It's challenges from everything. If I pass on before that time, then at least I'll pass on knowing I was doing my best the whole while. What I want is life to go on without me. To outlive me, and maybe if I'm lucky, be inspired by me. Hopefully I help make it better after me. And to cease the stagnation these fearful emperors and kings covet, seek to perpetuate. For that, I'm gonna need a more permanent solution. Instead of just refusing the fire. Dark Souls 2 is a weird game. It's the black sheep of the Souls family and the first Souls game that really leaned into its PvP aspect. I'm still happy that it got me into the Dark Souls series and to branch out from my comfort zone and try a genre that I thought I'd well and truly hate. And while this genre of game isn't even close to my favorite, I can still appreciate it for what it is. That said, the Company of Champions was an unnecessary modifier for the run. Yet in a sense, I'm grateful I did it. Because maybe it gave me a glimpse at what a more novice player would see. And because of just how glaringly powerful raw damage is and how seemingly ineffective status ailments were, the latter took a backseat this run where bleed at least had some application in Dark Souls 1. Kinda ruining the ability to mix it up even slightly. Just bigger numbers better, I guess. Dark Souls 2 just felt more disappointing than normal this time around, you know? An overly strong and worryingly sour brew, if you will. But let me know what you think down below. Thank you for watching. Amana will return in another adventure. If you've enjoyed your time, you're free to subscribe to keep up to date. And leave a like and comment so YouTube does the YouTube things. Don't worry, I won't just blitz through Dark Souls with fist weapons only. I got some other challenge ideas rattling around in my noggin. For Dark Souls and other games. So I'm not going away for a while. Plus, with regained familiarity with editing, maybe I'll return to my roots, do a Let's Player 6. We'll see. But with that said, folks, please remember, You're always welcome here at Amana's Potion, and I'll see you next time.